Europea en el marco de la Venta Adelante2. ¿De qué se trata? Es un programa, una herramienta de cooperación triangular, donde 3 entidades, en particular la Fundación AVSI de Milán, la Fundación AVSI AC de México y la Fundación León, se unen para generar una plataforma para compartir conocimiento, buenas prácticas y herramientas en materia de fortalecimiento de las organizaciones de productores y productoras de contextos rurales y de población indígena. Entonces, hoy nos encontramos reunidos con el equipo de León, algunos integrantes de la Venta Adelante2, que luego voy a invitar a dar algunas palabras, y también otros socios y colaboradores de otras instituciones que están trabajando en este marco, para escuchar la experiencia de la Fundación AVSI de Milán, que tiene una trayectoria en el marco de lo que es la agricultura sostenible y la seguridad alimentaria en diversos países. Entonces hoy la idea es que ellos transfieran alguna de estas prácticas y experiencias hacia el equipo de León y de los demás invitados y organizaciones que asisten hoy, para poder conocer y para poderlas implementar, es cierto, ¿no?, en los valles calchaquíes, donde estamos comenzando a trabajar junto a la comunidad del pueblo de Ubita. Así que bueno, hoy vamos a tenerlo a Francis Obita, que es el focal point de la Fundación AVSI para Seguridad Alimentaria y Agricultura, quien nos va a dar una charla de alrededor de 30 minutos sobre estas prácticas. Después de eso vamos a tener un espacio para preguntas y respuestas, y luego vamos a realizar un ejercicio participativo a partir de lo que él nos va a estar comentando ahora, y nos vamos a dividir ahí en diversos grupos, ¿no?, de entre 4 a 5 integrantes. Después, bueno, vamos a reunirnos de nuevo para una puesta en común del ejercicio y ya terminar este taller. Francis va a presentar en inglés, está conectado desde Kampala, Uganda. Así que para todos aquellos que quieran escuchar la interpretación simultánea, en la barra de herramientas, abajo del Zoom, van a ver que figura un pequeño planeta que dice interpretación. Si le dan clic ahí, eligen español, que es el idioma en el cual ustedes van a querer escuchar. Las van a escuchar a Patricia y Pamela, que son nuestras intérpretes que nos van a estar acompañando en el día de hoy. Así que bueno, en un principio darle la bienvenida. Paso la palabra primero al equipo de Adelante2, por si quieren también de su parte dar la bienvenida al comienzo de las actividades.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por invitarnos a este primer taller. Muy contento de ver que ya la Cooperación Triangular está en marcha con esta iniciativa, y ese espacio es el suyo. Nosotros estamos aquí como observadores, oyentes, pero muy agradecidos de hacer parte de este primer taller. Enhorabuena.
Muchísimas gracias, Icham. Así que bueno, le damos la palabra a Francis. Francis, welcome. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Martina. Good morning. I believe it's good morning in Buenos Aires. Greetings from my colleagues here. I told them I was going to share my experience and the experience of AVSI in the field of agriculture and food security, and they were really happy. Let me also greet my colleagues. I see Alessandro joining from Milano, Valentina, who is not very far away from here, and also the rest of you. And to the Argentines who are in the room, congratulations on winning the Copa America. It was a long time coming, so congrats on that. Yeah, so it's really an opportunity for us as AVSI to always share the good practices and the different lessons that we normally experience as we implement our projects in different parts of the world. And for today, the lessons, as was asked, is going to be around our experience in food security and agricultural livelihoods in the different rural communities. So we thought we could, I thought I could tell you something a bit about AVSI Foundation, whose mission mainly is to implement cooperation projects across the world. We work in 33 countries, and we put a lot of emphasis on education, because it's only through an education that a person can be able to discover their true self, and then can be accompanied to arrive at their full potential. So we do reach annually about 5 million beneficiaries directly, and about 35 million indirectly. And we are a team of over 2,300 staff, both made up of local staff and then expatriates, majority of whom are Italians. And our total annual budget is about 80 million euros per year. And our approach to work is mainly around five main principles. And the first one is always to start from the person, that is putting the person at the center of the work that we do. And after that, the recognition that a person is never alone, is part of a family, is part of a community. So when we work, we also put that in. The third one, sorry, just a moment. My connection is flying a bit. Yes, the third one is that we always want to accompany the people. And so we do this by doing it with them and other people who share the same way of thinking and share the same common goals. So we try very much to involve the community from the onset of the work that we do. And then we also involve the rest of the stakeholders. And at the end of it all, as the very last one, is that we want to learn from the experience of the work that we do, so that we are always better, so that we also do not leave the communities that we have been working with not better, meaning that lessons have to be drawn from the work that we do. So I just thought we could have this common view, so that when we begin talking about what we always focus on, we could understand better. So usually because we work in a very big world, we try to relate the different contexts to the bigger picture. So one of the things that we always pay attention are the bigger global goals. And so I thought, as part of the global context, we could look at some of the prevailing issues that in the end we will link it to the food system, and how we've been able to respond to them. And so the map that you see there is the poverty index. Is basically how the different parts of the world are moving towards achieving the sustainable development goals. Basically goal number 1, which is eradication of poverty. So as you can see, Argentina, the poverty is below 3%. So we could say it's not doing as bad as some of the places that we do work. Many of our interventions are in the middle of Africa, that's sub-Saharan and the Sahel region. Where I am from is actually Uganda. On that map, it's appearing in yellow. So you can see that it's off track. Argentina is below, so it's not as worse. So just to run quickly about some of the realities within the food system and globally. The global population is really flying, is increasing exponentially. And current data shows that at least 158 persons are being born per minute. And this is coming from at least 54%. No, 154 emerging economies. The food system in itself has really become less resilient because of the impact of the changing climatic patterns, but of recent, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that has really caused a lot of disruptions within the chain. The other thing that is worth noting is also that we still have about 700 million people living in extreme poverty, and this is something that really calls for concern. And that's where agriculture really dives in, because most studies by the World Bank, by FAO, by IFAD still put agriculture as one of the most efficient areas of investment as far as poverty eradication is concerned. And yet on the other side, you realize that the number of people engaged in agriculture is going down. Some of the data that is shared on the left-hand side of the slide can show that the ratio of persons to how many are farmers keeps going down. And if you look at farmer ratio per age, right now across the world, you find that 7 out of, at the age of 75, you realize that it's seven out of those who are age 75, and only 1 out of those who are age 25 years of age. So these are some of the things that we are really trying to pay attention to, also because if we do not address it, then we know that the issue of poverty is going to continue. So for us, agriculture is key as far as our attention to poverty reduction is concerned, and that is through the different interventions in the food system. So again, when you speak of the food system, if we try to see what is really happening within it, I had earlier said that the resilience has come down, has weakened mainly because of impacts of human activities that are leading to climate change, and then also of recent the impact of COVID-19. So on that slide, you can see some of the things that we think are wrong with the food system. There's a lot of waste. The waste is at 2 levels. In the production line, meaning during harvest, almost a third of the foodstuff produced is lost due to poor post-harvest handling. And then also at the consumption level, about a third is again lost. Okay, so we realize that there are issues within the food system that needs to be addressed. Data also shows that 60% of those who are hungry, because we have about 8 billion people who are hungry on the planet right now, and about 60% of them are women. So that again points us that we need to pay attention to the women. And it's again the women who also play a very big role in smallholding farming, what you call the smallholder farmers. So with that out of the way, we also thought that we could show you the different areas where AVSI is implementing food security and agricultural livelihood activities. You can see there are 15 countries across in South America, Central America, where there is Haiti, in Africa, Middle East, and then Myanmar in Asia. And we receive support from a number of donors, as you can see, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the Italian government, the Dutch government, the US government World Food Program, and the ones that you see listed there. Okay, so there are some programming approaches that we have used over the years, which we have found them to be best practices. And so I will now start to share them with you. The first one that I want to put on the table is the farmer field schools approach, which is an approach that was developed by the FAO and first piloted in Southeast Asia, that's Indonesia, where the attention was to improve the capacity of the farmers in understanding the farming system, in understanding what goes on in their gardens, so that they understand the solution, but they can also really be part of the solution. So with the farmer field schools approach, the farmer is normally taken through a participatory learning process where the learning is very experiential. It's through doing, meaning for every value chain enterprise, it can be a crop, can be an animal, the farmer is taken through an entire production cycle or the entire chain until, and let's say from farm to fork, they are able to get that kind of experience. And then they're also able to adopt other environmentally friendly farming approaches, which at the end of it all, then it creates a transformation, a socio-economic transformation that does not only address issues around agriculture, but also issues that affect the community. My colleague, Valentina, will have that moment to talk a little more about the farmer field schools with you. The other one that's always also part of the farmer field schools approach is the Village Savings and Loans Association scheme, where the communities are mobilized so that they establish their own scheme within their communities through which they are able to access financial credit that they can then use to invest or even to attend to other needs within. And this normally solves the problem that many rural communities have as far as access to financial credit is concerned. And then when we want to get our farmers into commercial farming, there is always a need to motivate them to have a model that gets them motivated. So we normally pick up an apprenticeship model where they can start to earn as they're in the learning process. So the model, we call it Earn As You Learn. It's an apprenticeship model. And this is how it works. You select beneficiaries and you also organize what you call the skills providers. And so for the skills providers, these are really those who are engaged within a value chain. So what happens, you use standard references that are then used to carry out the apprenticeship, which is a form of knowledge and skills transfer. So you have the beneficiary engaged in the exact production chain or the chain where products are coming from, so that they are part of the labor force and they receive a pay. They receive some sort of a pay. This has always helped because it normally keeps them hooked until they complete the training in itself. The other one then that I want to take us to is the need for mindset change, because without the change of the mind, there is no development. So there is normally what we do, the social behavior change communication, where attention is mainly on attitudes, practices, and knowledge. So for this, it's always around issues to do with savings, food handling, storage, and for the younger people, also engagement in agriculture, because in Africa, where I am from, many people look at agriculture as something for the peasants, those who are not educated. And for the younger people, it's also like a form of punishment. So we always try to start with the mindset change so that they actually start saying that if I engage in agriculture, I can actually earn a living, or it can be a line that I can build a long career in. Next is the youth. In most African countries, at least 70% of the population are below the age of 30. And so these are the youth. And so it's normally like a time bomb if the youth are unemployed, if the youth are engaged in livelihood options that lead them to crime, incarceration, and all that. So as AVSI, we always pay attention to the youth as well, because we know that they are the future. So we create interventions to engage the youth so that we can have a nucleus of positive deviants, meaning those who do the things which are right, which are appropriate, that can help the youth build a better future. So we do this through drama, through music, and we have one particular model that's very interesting. We call it sports for agripreneurship or agribusiness, where we do this in the schools. So we use sports because the young people really like it, to bring them together. And once they are there together, then you start delivering different content, agronomic skills, entrepreneurship skills, life skills. And we have really seen that this is something that works, because the young people, we really have many who are now starting their own agripreneurship. They start from the school and then they take it back to the communities, and their parents are also starting to appreciate. Some of them at the beginning would really be not happy, okay, because somebody says, I am a peasant, I send my child to school so that they can become an engineer, they can become a pilot, they become a doctor, but my child is coming back home and is practicing agriculture. Come on, what is going on? But then when they start to see that it actually brings money to the family, then they also start saying, okay, I think this is something that we can take up on. Then mother support groups in most rural communities, the most united group are normally the women. So when we engage the women, they normally lay a very strong foundation to bring change. So we engage them, especially in the area of nutrition, because in most of the rural community, nutrition is still a very big issue. So we engage them, we capacitate them so that they can set up backyard gardens, so that they can really have better ways of food handling, and thus reducing some of the waste that we have always seen. The last one is multi-stakeholder platforms. In most of the areas that AVSI has worked in, one of the things that we do is build strong community groups. And these strong community groups normally have to collaborate. And also our beneficiaries, we cannot provide everything. So we try to create avenues for linkages through which they're able to access important service points. And so we normally facilitate and support the establishment of many multi-stakeholder platforms. So how have we been approaching rural communities? These are some of the things that we have done, which we really see that they have worked very well. So number one is always remember to engage all relevant stakeholders from the beginning. You need to ensure that they're involved in the entire project management cycle. And it needs to be bottom up, not top bottom, because when it's top bottom, you're imposing and you're most likely to encounter a lot of resistance. And it's also important that you need to select an entry point, which entry point should really be through the local leadership structures. You don't just enter a community. Let's say you drive your car into the Kaltaki Valley and then you say, oh guys, we are from Fundación León, we are here, we want to solve all your problems, so please come to us. No, that always raises a lot of suspicions. And so it's important that as part of the entry plan, you have meetings with the local leadership. You explain to them why you're there, what your intentions are, and you really ask them how you can go about with this. The moment you have the local leadership as your allies, then you know now you're ready for the next step, which is to go and meet the community. So in doing so, you really need to respect the social setup, the culture of the area. One thing that we normally do is understand the culture of the place and try to align yourself to it. So, for instance, I was reading about the Tucuman province, and one of the things that I picked up was, something that happens between the Quilmes people and then the Inca. And so I was thinking, like, if I'm going to go to the Kaltaki Valley, I will try not to maybe speak about a group of people that it said they had problems before, because then someone will start thinking, so this person seems to know the other guys. And if maybe they get to see that you have a positive view about those that they consider their enemies, then my enemies' friends, my enemies too, no, right? So that may just become an obstacle. So respecting the dignity of the people, their culture, and all that can be very important, because then it will still allow you a smooth entry. Let me give you an example in Africa here. We have, in Africa here, women wearing trousers are considered disrespectful in a lot of rural settings. So if you're going to want to work with the community and you're going to have ladies who are going to show up and they're wearing trousers, you might want to think again, because you will not be given audience. You're going to be asked to leave. Why have you come to disrespect us? So just imagine what sometimes we do. We sometimes ask the ladies to put on sheets. They can have the trousers on the inside, but you put on a sheet. So when you arrive there, they're like, oh, they're here, they're very decent and all that. So this is some of the things that you normally have to pay attention to. Then very importantly, you really need to make it clear that you're not there to impose. You have to fit your intervention or your project to the people and not try to fit the people to your project. Otherwise, you're turning them into guinea pigs, sort of, because you want them to serve your purpose. Yet, you going there is supposed to be that you've gone to serve the purpose, the needs which are on the ground. And if you're really an ally of the people, then you need to believe in their potential. You don't need to show frustration. The problem can be really, really bad. But if you don't believe that the people have the potential to be accompanied and become better and become protagonists of their own journey, then you might not be lined up for success. So when rolling out, this is what we've always done. We've always done what's called the participatory needs assessment, meaning that you really want your intervention to reflect the needs which are on the ground. And mainly because then your response will be aligned to the needs and will basically be the needs which are able to address, right? And you also have to ensure that your interventions are socio-culturally appropriate. I know there are some areas, even in Africa here, where the people are really Christian, they're really Catholic, if I must say. When you go and let's say you've seen that part of the problem, the population growth is very high, and you think that if population growth can be managed better, then maybe the demand or the pressure on the food system might be lessened, and so things can move at a pace which is good. So one of the things that you might want to think is family planning. If it's a very Christian or Catholic community, if you do that, you will be creating issues. So you make sure that your interventions are socioculturally appropriate. Then it's important to normally start through a pilot phase, because that allows you then to, if you're going to make a mistake at a pilot phase, it's not that big, it's not too big compared to if you made the mistake in a project, in a fully fledged project which was already running. And also from the pilot phase, you can always make adjustments from the lessons that you will have learned during that phase. Then it's important to integrate some people from the local context to be part of your staff, for instance. That normally builds confidence, that normally starts to also build ownership. The community start to feel that they're really part of the intervention that is coming through. And in some areas, it may be difficult to find those that have the capacity. So you should also plan that if we're going to get some people from the community and their capacity is not good enough, we will need to find a way of training them, of building their capacity so that they're able to be part of it. And then progress, giving updates, periodic updates to the different stakeholders is also going to be important if you want to stay in Kalchaki Valley for long. Because we have this kind of situation that we have seen in the field. It's not something that AVSI does. AVSI is always giving feedback to the communities, but we have seen other actors, they introduce a project, then they implement it quietly until the end, then they leave. Next time there is an opportunity for them, they will come back to the community again and say, we have a project we want to do with you. If you do that, if the first time you just implemented quietly and left, when you come back, there's a likelihood the community will just tell you, last time you were here, you brought a project, you do it quietly and left. Now we do not want to work with you. We're about to be done here. So I selected a few tools for doing participatory rural appraisal that really helps the entry, the understanding, and how to really pick up. Just a moment. Okay. Yeah, so when you talk about participatory rural appraisal, it's just a set of methods and tools that you use to collect data to have a better understanding. We normally call it reverse learning because you're learning from the people that you want to work with. So much as you might not get the most accurate of information, at least it's directly from the context. It's a lot better than just doing secondary literature review about an area, then you start to think that you really know it. No, when you do a proper participatory appraisal, you really get the feel of what's on the ground, and then you can always do the necessary planning aligned to the context that you are going to intervene in. So there are a number of tools. I just picked a few. The first one is the Transect work and social mapping. Many times seeing is believing. okay, or seeing physically gives you the feel, you know, more than if you just see it in a picture and all that. But why the Transect work is important is that you want to see, okay, you want to see the opportunities which are on the ground. You want to see the resources that exist on the ground around which you can actually plan interventions, around which you can leverage. And then there is the social mapping, which brings the whole community into perspective, meaning you want to know where the gardens can be, you want to know where the different service points are, you want to know about things that happen within there. So when you bring the community together, you can always create a social map very quickly. You just ask people, okay, you get an open space on the ground. You can actually use the soil. Say now each one, let's show where the road is, let's show where, okay, so at the end of it all, you have a good picture that can help you with the planning. A seasonal calendar is the next method or tool, which will help you to know which part of the year, which activities are taking place. So normally we can have from January to December. So you work again in a session, you ask the people between January and March, or between this season, what are you doing? How about in this phase? How about in this phase? That way, you get to know what happens throughout the year. Then if you want to plan certain activities, maybe there are some you want to synchronize, or there are others that you want to do at a time when the people are less busy. So a seasonal calendar becomes your very good friend. Then the other one is activity profiling. Again, of course, linked to the seasonal calendar, but there are different types of activities that normally run within a community. We have what you call the productive activities. These are the things, these are the activities that members of the community do in order to make some money or in order to get something back. Then you have the reproductive activities, which are activities that is done in a home, not necessarily to bring in money, but to ensure that life goes on normally. For instance, childcare, for instance, cooking, you know, these kind of activities. And then the community activities that members of the community normally do so that the community is strong. It can be creating a road, it can be cleaning up, it can be, you know, so you also need to know what kind of activities run. That also helps you when it comes to planning. The next one, the next method or tool to use is profiling resource control. So in order to understand that, you need to know who owns the different resources within the community. You need to know who has access to them. That way, you clearly know who is in control, and in case you want to touch, in case you want to tap or leverage on a resource within the community, you already know through your resource control profile who to approach. So you can see the first table up there, different resources and who has access, who has control, and then who has ownership. So that also helps you understand the community better. Then you should always try to see what the problems are when you're doing participatory appraisal. So you can do a session with the community so that they can tell you the different problems that are there, and together with them you can create a problem tree, because sometimes what is presented as a problem is actually a root cause of another problem. So you can always identify all the problems, and once you've identified the problems, you have to rank them. Which ones are more important? Which ones need to be addressed first? And a tool that you can use for that is what's called the pairwise ranking matrix, which you can see there. You list problems vertically like this, and then horizontally in the same order. Then you begin to mark. For instance, markets, which one is more important? Which one do you want to be addressed first? Then you mark it there. About capital and markets, which one is of more urgency for you? Then at the end of it all, you have your matrix, you have your problems ranked, and you know which one to address first. The other one is the option solution assessment, because you also want to brainstorm really with the community first. Now we have this problem, what can we do? So for each problem, you try to assess different solutions, and that you use this, okay? What could the problem be? Like in this case, vegetable diseases and then pests. So what are the signs? How do you know that? How would you tell that this is a problem? So the signs are there. What do you think the root causes are? So how can you cope if the problem is already there within your production system? And then what are the possible solutions? Okay, so when you have your solution, again, you want to assess this solution to see which one is the most appropriate. So you use the matrix here, and some of the variables that you'd focus on is if that solution is easy to sustain over time, if it increases productivity, if it does not require a lot of time to do it, if it benefits everyone, meaning the plants, the environment, and then human beings, and then the cost, that is if it's expensive or not. With that, we use a little more time. I will end the presentation there. Now we can do some questions and answers. Then we go to the group work. Thank you for listening.
Muchas gracias, Francis. La verdad, muy clara toda la presentación. Yo también tengo algunas preguntas para hacerte. Lo que les propongo es ajustar un poco el tiempo del espacio de pregunta que estaba previsto 6 minutos a 10, como para recuperar un poco. Y no sé si les parece bien la metodología, pero quizás pueden ir por el chat pidiendo palabra. Yo les voy dando palabra a cada uno para que haga su pregunta a Francis, y Pamela y Patricia vayan traduciéndole a él para que pueda dar su respuesta. Así que estoy mirando el chat.
Diego ahí pide la palabra a Martina. Te escuchamos, Diego.
Bueno, ¿me escuchan? Primero que nada, muchas gracias, Francis. Me pareció súper interesante y súper claro todo lo que preparaste, además con muchos ejemplos que tienen que ver con nuestra realidad en el norte argentino. Y me interesó sobre todo este concepto fundamental, que es la agricultura como herramienta para erradicar la pobreza. Creo que es súper interesante. Mi pregunta, tengo 2 preguntas en realidad, pero la primera pregunta es que desarrolles un poco más el tema del lugar de la mujer en la agricultura como herramienta para erradicar la pobreza.
Okay. Yeah. Really, yeah. Thank you, Diego. It's really pleasing that you appreciated the presentation. Now, the role of women in poverty eradication. Normally when we try to profile the activities that women are engaged in, you realize that they do both. They do both a lot of productive activities as well as reproductive activities. So at the end of the day, they're always the most burdened. They're like carrying the biggest cross. So this also compromises how productive they can be. If you look at the agricultural value chains, you realize that the women are normally distributed along the entire chain, especially in the rural areas. You find them in the garden, you find them doing the transportation, you find them at the marketplace, okay? But when it comes to the decision-making on how the proceeds, including the money from agriculture is concerned, how to utilize them, the decision-making many times lies away from them. It's either the men, and if they have sons so big, they are the ones who normally want to make the decisions. And many times the decisions are not necessarily towards improving the social economic situation within the household. In some areas, like I can use examples here in Africa, some men at the end of the season, when the harvest is very good, they have sold the proceeds and there's a lot of money, it's time to marry another wife. Some of them, it's time to increase the number of bottles of alcohol that they drink a day. Some just want to, to waste the money. Yet, if this decision on how to utilize the proceeds from the farming system, if the decision was in the hands of the women, many times they want to make sure there's sufficient food in the house. They want to make sure that all the basic needs are taken care of, okay? So that is why, to build the capacity of the women to do gender mainstreaming in a lot of the different levels along the value chain, where the women are actually part of the decision-making table, where their voice is taken seriously, you'd realize then that the different proceeds from agriculture, if put to use, will actually lead to socioeconomic transformation, not only at the household level, but also at the community level. Because the women know that if we do not change this, then the burden is still going to remain on us. Does that answer you? That's how we've always seen it, and that's why we always want to empower women. We want to empower them along the different value chains. We need to put them at the decision-making table, so that, because many times we as men, we might think we know what their needs are, when it might not really be the same. It's only when you put them on that table and we say, if you're going to say this, we're going to listen to it. That's when we understand what they really want to see done.
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Francis. Clarísimo.
Welcome.
Yo tengo una pregunta para hacerte, Francis, mientras los otros van viendo. Vos, entre las buenas prácticas, mencionaste el hecho de incluir dentro de los equipos de trabajo a personal local. Aquí hemos tenido, bueno, cada uno experiencias en el territorio, y la verdad es que a veces se hace muy crítico ese punto del poder, digamos, retribuir a uno o dos miembros de la comunidad y no a los demás. Entonces, como que a veces por ahí se prioriza personal que inclusive venga de otra localidad para evitar tener, digamos, ese cuestionamiento a nivel local. ¿Qué tipo de estrategia o de, digamos, herramienta de persuasión tienen en ese sentido a la hora de abordar a una comunidad? O sea, ¿cómo manejan este tema?
Okay, thank you really. Yeah, so let me just share experience on how we have handled such kind of scenarios, because it's actually true that there are some areas that you go to and it's difficult to find the right people. So one of the things is that you need to really look for how long you want to be in the area, how long are the interventions going to be, so that you can make the decision of how much to invest as far as human capital development is concerned. Now, in an instant, for one project, at the start, looking at the kind of interventions that need to be done, and then the level of expertise that is required, it's very important to discuss this with the different stakeholders who are there at the very beginning, inception phase, so that they will understand that in order for this to be done, in order for us to achieve the results that we are looking at, the level of expertise is going to be like this. And if we do not have, then we might not be able to. So I know when I just say it, it really sounds simple, but you must not give up to dialogue with the communities, because it's the only way that they can have ownership and they can really accept to embrace the intervention and be able to be part of the result. So there is no clear-cut answer to this, but what we have seen is that open dialogue and with a lot of honesty. For instance, if the project is going to be for 5 years, you can always say the first 2 years we will only have people from other places, while in this period we are trying to train the locals. Maybe you send them to another place, like let's say if the place where they should be trained is in Buenos Aires, then you send them there. Then you make sure that they really receive the same training. Then you also, within the project, you can provide opportunities for apprenticeship, on-job training, so that we can have some of the locals who will start climbing the chain, right? They can really begin working in the field as field officers, then maybe they can become senior supervisors, then at some point they become managers. So it's always a process when it comes to the rural areas. Getting the kind of expertise that would suit a lot of the projects is very hard, but you need to do the dialogue, and then you need to have a plan that will, at the end, arrive at having some of them as part of the project team. That's what I can say.
Muchas gracias. ¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta para Francis? Diego pregunta, ¿podrías explicar cómo los jóvenes y el deporte constituyen una buena práctica?
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, so I will use the context of a school, right? So in the school, especially today, there are a lot of activities that the young people, a lot of extracurricular activities that the young people can always engage into. Some of them lead them to the wrong path, like if they get to use drugs, they get into violence and all that. So the sports for agribusiness or agripreneurship model aims at bringing the young people to embrace, basically to see agriculture as a good livelihood option, which is something that they can actually start to develop career path into. Now, sports like football, basketball, I mean, they are popular, and it's something that normally pulls the youth together. So what normally happens, like, let's say it's a school, so you introduce basketball, a very urban sport, and so girls or boys really want to come and play. But then you are saying, in order to play, in order to enjoy this sport, you're going to have to participate in other activities as a precondition. You're going to learn agronomic skills. You're going to participate in life skills so that you really understand yourself better, communicate better, have plans for the future, build your confidence in talking in public and so on. And then you'll also have to start learning some entrepreneurship. Okay, so the sport is something that young people really like. So they just know, if I am to play basketball, then I have to learn these other things. And then because there is a lot of practical sessions, many of them start to appreciate, okay, they, okay, so this is how you do it. But remember that agriculture is also a subject in the school, which they can study and they be examined in. So many times we have seen through the practicality, through the practical sessions, and then the fact that the young people use the skills that they learn in the different clubs, they use it in their ventures through which they make money. Many of them now start to enroll for the agriculture subject in itself. And also because they already know how to do these things practically, many of them start to perform better in the subject of agriculture. So in the end of it, for a country or for a community whose socioeconomic backbone is in agriculture, getting the young people to start engaging in agriculture, which later they take home and everybody starts to do something in agriculture that earns them money, is a socio-economic transformation best practice for us. I don't know if I've answered that.
Me parece que sí. Ahí estuvo la respuesta. Francis, ¿te parece si pasamos al ejercicio ahora? Nos queda media hora de actividad.
Yes. Yeah, I am saying this. I'm saying this. Yeah, so the exercise, it's really going to be around PRA, that's participatory rural appraisal. So this picture, I picked it from somebody who was in the Kalchaki Valley. And so it's a picture that I do think can really be useful for the exercise that I have thought. So if we can break ourselves into the groups that Martina said, then maybe we use 15 or so minutes. I don't know how much time you do have there. I can be flexible. We can agree on the time. But if we can answer these questions through the exercise, and then we come back to the plenary and talk a bit about it, I believe it can really be of great help for the work that you want to do that. So the questions, as you can see, they've been translated, and I believe it should be shared with the groups that are going to be formed. And I believe the questions are quite clear. If they're not clear, we shall be here in the main room waiting for you to come back. Over to you, Martina.
Gracias. Así es, los voy a dividir ahora en grupos, tratamos de realizar la actividad en máximo 15 minutos, elijan un vocero cada grupo que va a estar poniendo en común la respuesta a las preguntas para todo el grupo. Así que después nos reencontramos y que cada grupo haga su presentación hablando un minutito y después ya damos un cierre al encuentro. I'm visiting the group, Francis. And I go back to the main session room. Sorry, the girls just told me that they had bad internet, so it was a chaos, I think.
It's okay. No problem. Okay.
Great.
I will wait here.
Okay, I leave you here with Diego, Patricia, and Pamela.
Great.
Okay. I missed one group. There were just 2 people. There was a group who finished actually all the 7 questions, and the others were like stepping in the second one. So I'm not sure they could finish.
Okay, so what do you propose?
We can just call them from first group to the 5th one to present very briefly, and then we can just make a conclusion. Maybe Diego can help us. Maybe Diego wants to make the conclusion at the end after the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let's close all rooms. Okay, in 1 minute, they will all be here with us.
Ahí están detenida y continúa, Martina.
¿Cómo?
Ya están todos de regreso.
No, Marti, ho fatto casino, ho schiacciato il pulsante e sono tornato.
Alessandro.
Non dovevo entrare, sono entrato e ho sbagliato, sono rimasto lì e sono uscito per sbaglio.
Vabbè, adesso sei qui di nuovo con noi.
Diglielo a loro che mi spiace, ma ho sbagliato. Stavo parlando e ho schiacciato il pulsante.
Ok, Alessandro pide disculpas porque sin querer salió del grupo. Así que bueno, le pido disculpas a las chicas. Bueno, bienvenidos de vuelta. Ahora los vamos a invitar a cada uno de los 5 grupos a presentar la respuesta a las 7 preguntas o a las que han podido trabajar en el poco tiempo que tuvieron. Así que si les parece bien, yo comenzaría con el grupo 1 a seguir el 2, el 3 y así en adelante. Así que avanti grupo 1, ¿quién es el vocero?
Yo.
No,
Bueno,
creo que no éramos el 1, ni la...
¿No?
Yo creo que nosotros éramos el 1.
Éramos el 7.
Yo creo que éramos
Bueno,
el 5, Nilda.
Bueno, ¿comienzo yo entonces?
Avanti.
Bueno, hemos trabajado con Pau, con dificultades con el idioma de Alessandro, pero bueno, hemos logrado salvar la situación. Bueno, en cuanto al punto número 1, ¿qué tipo de evaluación inicial harían para entender las temáticas a abordar? Pensamos que es fundamental primero hacer como una pequeña o un pseudo diagnóstico socioambiental del lugar, del contexto en el cual se va a trabajar, entendiendo que cada comunidad tiene su propia cultura, sus propias creencias, costumbres. Entonces trabajar desde eso, desde la escucha de cada uno de los miembros de la comunidad y ver cuáles son sus demandas, porque creemos que es fundamental para poder desarrollar un plan de trabajo. Nos parecía como por ahí abrupto llegar con toda la oferta programática, hablando de León, sin conocer primero cuáles son sus demandas o cuáles son sus necesidades. Y pensamos que por ahí, en cuanto a esos ítems que hemos pensado, pensamos que es fundamental trabajar en la educación, la cultura, las costumbres, el trabajo, la inclusión. En cuanto a lo que observamos de alguna actividad socioeconómica, hablábamos un poquitito ahí con Pau, que es la que conoce más del campo, que bueno, ahí en la imagen se puede apreciar que hay vegetación, por lo tanto pueden trabajar de la agricultura, también en esa región se trabaja mucho sobre el arte, la artesanía, la siembra, la cría de animales que están adaptados a ese tipo de clima o de ecosistema. ¿Qué más? ¿Ven algún recurso natural útil, importante para actividades de subsistencia? Sí, claramente sí. El agua, la vegetación, el recurso humano, o sea, los miembros de la comunidad, también los animales y todo lo que pueda contribuir a su subsistencia. Después pueden identificar temáticas que merezcan ser abordadas desde la fotografía. Claramente pensamos que la temática principal, y que creo que nos atraviesa a todos, es la educación, y que eso va a abrir un montón de puertas para muchas cosas, ¿no? Si bien ellos ya tienen arraigado una forma de trabajo, una forma de vida, potenciar todo eso a través de la educación y brindarles como más herramientas que puedan mejorar aún así los procesos. ¿Y cuáles abordarían como Fundación León? Charlando con Pau, pensamos que esto que hemos implementado ahora con las becas es fundamental, porque les va a permitir profundizar todo lo que conocen, adquirir nuevos conocimientos, salir a otros lugares, y también pensamos que otra forma podría ser el emprendedorismo, y con esas herramientas poder ellos emprender nuevas instancias para ir creciendo día a día en las actividades que ya vienen haciendo, y por qué no sumar otras actividades nuevas. Y después, si hay otras temáticas que no pueden abordar, a quienes las podrían redireccionar, y como venimos trabajando en León desde nuestra forma de trabajo, creo que abocarnos a las alianzas estratégicas con el Estado, otras organizaciones de la sociedad civil, para potenciar todo esto que inicia o que pretendemos iniciar en esas comunidades. Y después dice cómo abordarían a la comunidad para desarrollar un proyecto que atienda a estas temáticas específicas, principalmente desde la escucha activa, escuchar lo que tienen para decir esas comunidades, que nos parece como lo más importante, desde el diálogo, para conocer qué es lo que ellos necesitan, cómo lo necesitan, y siempre respetando su costumbre, su lugar, sus formas de vida. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a vos, Adrián. Grupo 2.
Buenas, ¿cómo están? Bueno, lo que fuimos construyendo con Angie tiene mucho que ver con lo que fue contando el grupo 1 también. Nosotros por ahí habíamos pensado como un instrumento de recolección de datos un poco más específico, pensamos una encuesta, hacer un relevamiento casa por casa, y luego sociabilizar los resultados con los participantes en algún espacio en común, por ejemplo, que puede ser proporcionado por el gobierno local, y de ahí podemos ir construyendo como las primeras alianzas en la construcción de un diagnóstico. Específicamente, también nos enfocamos como en una actividad productiva en particular, como puede ser la creación del vino, teniendo en cuenta los frutos que forman parte de cada uno de los territorios, y las actividades que pensábamos desde la Fundación por ahí tenían que ver con la generación de emprendimientos y que permitan crear un producto en particular y pensar a futuro su expansión y su comercialización. Por ahí se nos ocurría que había ciertas temáticas que escapaban un poco de la Fundación y que necesitaban de una articulación en particular, como por ejemplo la conectividad, el acceso a Internet, todo siempre pensándolo desde este lado de comercialización y de expansión en el mercado, digamos, de los productos que las propias comunidades vayan generando. Y bueno, la idea de todo esto es siempre pensar en un trabajo en conjunto con los productores, con los nuevos emprendedores y con los diferentes actores sociales que vayan como apareciendo en la temática. Esto más o menos como una idea general, más que ir respondiendo como las preguntas, pero lo queríamos resumir de la mejor manera en el mejor tiempo posible. No sé si Angie, vos querés agregar algo más.
No, está bien, y siempre, bueno, enfocarnos en que justamente los emprendimientos no queden solamente para comercializar ahí en los valles solamente, sino también brindarles herramientas para que se puedan abrir a nuevos mercados, que es la idea principal, que puedan tener una mirada más amplia.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias, chicas. Ahora pasamos al grupo 3. Les recuerdo que están Pamela y Patricia traduciendo en forma simultánea, así que tratemos de hablar un poquito más despacio, pobrecita, porque recién pasé a inglés y creo que Patricia no estaba respirando.
Hola, nosotros éramos el grupo 3, estábamos con Julio. Bueno, lo que planteamos en la primera pregunta es básicamente lo que han comentado ya anteriormente, el involucrar, fundamental el involucrar a la comunidad, no caer con algo armado nosotros, sino involucrar, saber cuáles son las necesidades desde su punto de vista y también conocer si hay estudios previos, si ha habido intervenciones previas en la zona o con la comunidad con la que se va a trabajar. Con respecto a si observamos alguna actividad socioeconómica, bueno, lo que vemos, actividades de subsistencia, la ganadería. Ahí Julio, que conoce un poco más de la zona, decía que hay principalmente caprina y ovina, la horticultura, y lo que vemos en la imagen también el caballo como medio de movilidad. Con respecto a si vemos algún recurso importante, bueno, los animales y el clima, que favorece que se puedan llevar a cabo distintos tipos de distintas especies de horticultura. ¿Alguna temática que pueda ser abordada? Retomando de nuevo el tema del caballo, comentaba Julio que vemos que es el medio principal de movilidad, pero que no por ello la gente piense en que les gustaría disponer de otros medios para poder moverse. Entonces, poder abordar eso por una parte, y por otra, hablamos todo el rato de economía de subsistencia, el tratar de salir de esa economía de subsistencia y poder llevar a un mercado nacional, o sea, de mayor impacto, que no sea solamente para subsistir. En cuanto a las actividades que pudiese hacer León, en primer término, en base a lo que venimos hablando, la capacitación a productores como primer término, y después, igual que hemos hecho en otras comunidades donde viene trabajando la Fundación desde hace tiempo, a partir de eso ir abordando con los otros programas que tenemos a las familias en las distintas esferas, pues con la primera infancia, con los chicos que están en secundaria con becas, las distintas esferas que puede abordar León. Y con otros ejes, como las 7, otras actividades que pueda, las 6, perdón, otras temáticas que Fundación León no aborde, sí que veíamos importante el tema de las infraestructuras, y en especial la falta de agua potable, que para eso sí que sería importante articular tanto con el Estado provincial como, sobre todo, para tema de financiación con otras organizaciones internacionales. Eso. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Daniel. Sigue el grupo 4.
Éramos el grupo 4 nosotros. Diego es nuestro... Sí.
Ah, ok, perfecto, perdón. Bueno, nosotros, yo quiero rescatar 2 temas que me parecen importantes de la conversación que tuvimos a partir de las preguntas que nos dio Francis. Lo primero sería la importancia de trabajar con la comunidad para poder entender a la comunidad desde el punto cero. Esto lo que hablamos sería interesante hacer entrevistas a diferentes informantes como para poder entender lo que está pasando y también diseñar el proyecto desde el inicio con la comunidad, viendo las diferentes problemáticas que hay. Y aquí un aporte que me pareció muy interesante de Valentina, yo estuve en el grupo con Valentina y con Marcela, fue que sería importante abordar el tema de la protección ambiental, porque si vamos a trabajar la agricultura, esto siempre conlleva a diferentes dificultades que tienen que ver con la contaminación. Veíamos el río, veíamos la falta de árboles, veíamos como una serie de elementos que nos llamaban la atención, que tienen que ver con la protección ambiental. Entonces, esto sería como el eje de la intervención nuestra en este sentido, que tiene que ver también, por supuesto, con la educación y con la concientización sobre las problemáticas que puede acarrear el tema de la agricultura. También vimos el tema del río y la importancia como recurso natural, pero que también podría estar contaminado y que habría que abordar esa temática particular. Eso como sumando a lo que ya dijeron todos los demás y como punto diferencial. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Diego. Queda el último grupo, el número 5.
Bueno, buenos días a todos, el gusto de saludarlos. Yo creo que habría que haberlo situado al paisaje más, porque si bien todo el Valle Calchaquí tiene un mismo origen geológico y también histórico, la diversidad es muy grande. Entonces, primero que nada, habría que citar. Creo, si no me equivoco, me corrigen los tucumanos, que es entrando a Tafí del Valle, ese paisaje. Bueno, ese paisaje muestra una multitud de recursos. Tiene el agua, tiene los caballos, que son fuente de movilidad, como se han dicho, y de acarreo. Tiene esa pampa atrás, que puede servir para sembrar, para hacer canchas de polo, que es un deporte que se lleva mucho en la provincia de Tucumán, y viene bien con la caballeriza que se puede encontrar ahí en Tafí. Puede ser una pampa para criar ganado. Atrás tiene un cerro que puede ser objeto de deportes, como no es un cerro tan alto, sino que es un cerro medianamente alto. Se puede hacer senderismo, se puede hacer montañismo, iniciar las clases ahí. Fundamentalmente el clima, no sé quién ha citado como un recurso espectacular el clima, y también como un recurso espectacular el paisaje en sí mismo para lo que es toda la salud mental, ¿no? Y la recuperación de posoperatorios, por ejemplo. Ahí el solo mirar ese lugar, uno realmente se recompone, ¿no? Así que me parece muy importante lo que ha dicho Diego, de que si tuviéramos que hacer en ese paisaje, o desde ahí, una intervención, estaría muy bueno lo del cuidado del medio ambiente, ¿no? Que es el recurso en sí que hay ahí, ¿no? Y después la otra cosa que habría que hacer, primero que nada, es hacer un estudio exhaustivo, histórico, cultural, social. Es decir, conocer la historia de estos lugares, que es lo que nosotros primero hemos hecho cuando hemos instalado ahí el proyecto Adobe y el proyecto de cuidados compartidos. Aprender, bueno, cómo fueron las prácticas sociales de esos grupos desde su origen y desde la destrucción que hace la colonización hasta nuestros días, ¿no? Si hay que actuar en los valles calchaquíes, las fuentes como dice Diego, ver a los líderes del lugar, pero no excluir a los líderes de los pueblos originarios. En este sentido, consultar a los caciques y los delegados comunales, y paralelamente a las autoridades que fija la constitución de la provincia como autoridades municipales, gubernamentales, ¿no? Bueno, sumado a todo lo que ha dicho cada uno de los grupos con el cual compartimos. ¿Me olvido de algo, Jenny? No.
Muchas gracias, Nilda. Ahora le doy la palabra a Francis, por si tiene alguna recomendación para nosotros en base a lo que fue escuchando de ustedes, y para ya darle alguna reflexión de cierre al taller.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Martina, and everyone for the really, really good work that happened in the groups. What came out clearly is that you are actually very many steps ahead in terms of you already have a very good idea of the context, which is always key. And then the team also is very much aware of what needs to be done. So it looks like the experience that we shared today, many of them were already in practice down there. So I'll just say you need to put all these ideas into practice, make sure that the assessments that have been mentioned are really thorough. And then, as said, make sure that you move together with the people. If you move ahead of them, then they will not have the energy to follow you. You need to make this a journey of accompaniment, because then the people will accompany the project to achieve the results, and then the project will accompany the people to reach a better level in the life that they are living. And from what I have heard, I think the choice to do an education project, to pay attention to education, livelihoods, and all that might require you to think of a multi-sectoral approach where you try to integrate different models that in the end will be able to respond in an integrated way the issues that you will identify on the ground. That way you will be able to not necessarily just solve one issue, but create impact that will also trigger the changes, even in some areas that you are not necessarily targeted. The good thing with the multi-sectoral or integrated approach is that many times it leads to really, really good unintended outcomes. And so for me, or from this side, I can just say it was a big pleasure to share our experience with you, and I'm very confident that you are already on a very good path. And so let's just hope that all goes well, and from AVSI we shall always be there to be friends, and where there's an opportunity to work together, we'll be there. So let me hand over to Diego. Really nice speaking with all of you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Francis. La verdad que para mí es un gran gusto poder escucharte. Además me pareció que lo preparaste especialmente para nosotros, y eso nos gustó y nos sorprendió mucho, nos encantó. Que a pesar de estar a tantos kilómetros de distancia, que podamos compartir tantas cosas en común, tantos puntos de encuentro, me parece que es muy valioso y muy interesante. Yo quiero rescatar una frase que dijiste recién, que me pareció que fue lo que impregnó todo el taller, que fue el tema de compañeros de ruta. Y creo que esto es lo más importante, ¿no? Que no caminar adelante, sino que caminar a la par. Y lo que significa esto como práctica educativa, porque creo que esto resume lo que para nosotros y para AVSI significa la educación, ¿no? Una práctica social en donde hay un punto de encuentro que se basa en un acompañamiento, en donde hay un aprendizaje mutuo y donde se construyen esos aprendizajes. Y creo que si tomamos ese punto de encuentro como el eje de nuestras intervenciones, todo va a ser exitoso y todo va a ser constructivo y también transformador. Así que la verdad que te agradezco porque de alguna manera todo lo que nos enseñaste hoy lo pudimos ir construyendo conjuntamente y saber que no estamos mal nosotros, que estamos en un buen camino. Y esto para mí es muy importante, escuchar que AVSI, que lleva tantos años trabajando en estas temáticas, que está haciendo esto. Y por último, recalcar dos temas que me parecieron importantísimos. Por una parte, el lugar de la mujer en la toma de decisiones, que me parece que es súper valioso y que creo que debe ser uno de los enfoques principales de todos los proyectos. Y segundo, el lugar de los jóvenes. El lugar de los jóvenes como protagonistas de los cambios que buscamos en las comunidades donde estamos trabajando. Estos dos poblaciones creo que son esenciales para realmente lograr un cambio. Así que bueno, agradezco muchísimo a Francis, a AVSI y por supuesto a Adelante2, que ha permitido este taller, este espacio en donde pudimos encontrarnos y acortar las distancias entre África y América y encontrarnos juntos en este momento. Muchísimas gracias.